Welcome to the Joyosity Podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Whether you are a seasoned leader or just starting out, Joyosity is the community for you. And here's what we're doing here. We are basing all of our work on these three bedrock beliefs. Number one, that true leadership requires a profound connection to everything that makes us human. Number two is the next one. Two is using genuine curiosity so we can work with the complex people that we have in order to create a positive culture. So work is a joy. And number three, that joy is the heartbeat of a healthy leader and a healthy organization. So we're putting joy right in the center of our work. And every week we are bringing you dynamic conversations with experts and leaders sharing not just a couple tips, but really their hard-won wisdom, their real-life experiences, and leading research that help us all do better and create a better workplace for everyone. I'm Jen Whitmer. I'm an international speaker and leadership consultant and all-around joy bringer, really hosting us on this journey of taking ideas and putting them into action so we can embrace the challenges of living in this very dynamic, very fast-paced, changing world. But what we're bringing you is a way to manage that so you can have deep insights that will transform you as a person and really develop you as a leader. So get ready because we are coming with part 2 with Krista Monson. And if you didn't get to listen to part 1, I highly suggest you go back because Krista tells a great story of who she is to give a little bit of a recap of the amazing human that is Krista. Krista started her career as a dancer and then moved into the creative storytelling business as a show writer and award-winning stage director and creative director and conceptor, all of these places, and spent years at Cirque Du Soleil as the artistic director of O. She has worked in choreographing opening and closing ceremonies for large sporting events, the IAAF World Championship, and 11 countries, including her native and dear to her heart, Canada. And just most recently, she has taken that storytelling from the big stage to the small stage and working for herself and stepping aside from that big world of entertainment to developing Sincerely Yours memoir as a documentarian, helping families really preserve those stories. And what she is teaching us is this idea around how we connect the more that we sometimes want more in life, but it doesn't always mean doing more. And we have these big concepts out in the world of finding your passion and finding your purpose and finding clarity. And they're really difficult concepts. And we kind of stopped there last week. So I'm going to welcome Krista back on so we can continue our
Hi, Jen. Hi.
Yay. So we paused a little bit in our conversation and talking about this, your wide-ranging career that I think is more the norm than than what we think sometimes. We always think sometimes that, oh, if I didn't take it, step 1, step 2, step 3, that I haven't done something right in my career, when actually that is the common practice. And we often hear also about finding our passion and finding our clarity and these are really, really big words. And one of the things that you have developed is the idea of this toolkit of how we do that. And because I often find with my clients, when we start talking about the more of values and the more of personality and story, it's like, I actually don't know. Like, it feels a little trapping. So
Absolutely.
how, what are some items in this toolkit that can help us in our leadership and when we're pressured from all sides? I mean, I can't think of a much more high pressured situation than running a show with artists speaking 20 different languages. And, you got to go on, stage has got to go. The curtain is coming up. Like, it's a high pressure place.
Yeah.
How did you create space for that?
Yeah. I realized I kind of, at one point, I developed this toolkit. It's the creative, I call it actually a creative survival kit, or it's a toolkit, because sometimes we feel like we're on the ledge a little bit, so it's a fun take on that word survival. But really, these items in this kit, I developed or tried to identify. These are the same group of items that were the beginning steps of every single multi-million dollar, spectacle I was involved with.
Mm.
So, and or every single change or reincarnation I've made, or the so this is they're ethereal, they're simple, they are available 24/7, and they're free. And
Ah,
so sometimes when we think, oh, we're really ready to make a big transition, and we invest a lot of money and we attend things and conferences, which is fantastic. It's great to learn from others and listen. But I kind of ask myself, what how did I get there, and what helped me in those times when I'm sitting in this, the show is going to open in 4 days, things are going wrong, and it has to be successful. And I've been told by the producer, your show that you're writing has to feed 300 people for 2 years. It cannot fail, So
that's not pressure at all. So
yeah,
like,
nah, exactly. So these items. The first one is, um, be very careful of when we use the word just in our language with others and in our language with ourselves. Often it can be a form of feeling being small
Mhm.
and feeling and apologizing for where we are. For example, when I'm working with emerging, you know, C-suite people, and they will say, I'll say, what are you doing, what's your area, and they will say, oh, I'm just the deputy VP, or I'm just, so we're just doing a 5K run on the weekend, and I'm just helping some kids, or I'm just doing this, I'm just doing that. For emerging artists that I work with, they will often say, oh, I'm just serving tables while I'm waiting for my real career to take off. I'm just doing that. I'm doing this freebie, or, I'm doing something for free to get my work exposed. And I propose, remove the word.
Mm.
I am serving tables while I'm, I'm nobly and courageously pursuing my craft
Yeah.
and paying rent at the same time.
Mhm.
I am working with a 5K run. And so be careful of that. I find that when I would do that, I would catch myself and realize I'm diminishing myself there. I'm just chipping away. So ask ourselves how we use just is the first one. The second one is be curious.
Mm. Well, I love that one.
You are the queen of curiosity and joyosity. You're the absolute queen. But I use the word curiosity instead of passion. I propose use the word curiosity instead of passion. Because as you mentioned, passion's such a big word. And we ask our kids, what's your passion? Adults, what's your passion? I don't know, but I know I might be curious about, yeah, and it starts with observation.
Mhm.
When we leave our home, we look at people at the mailbox, and just be curious about maybe in my field anyway. When I was building characters, it all started from regular life, just
Mhm.
regular life, and they became larger than life characters who could do superhuman feats. But the soul of that character was not because they could dive well.
Mm.
That's not how Cirque du Soleil became the enterprise it is. It's because it moves people, it transports people with emotion.
Mhm.
So lean in and be curious. The third one, I find it's really important, and I urge everyone to find this, is create an encounter with the sublime. Some people may
Mm.
call it the divine, but the sublime is anything that makes us wonder,
Yeah.
awe, wonder. I promise. And the first I've learned the hard way is breath.
Ah,
I used to kind of think, oh, deep breathing and yoga and this and that was just a little bit of an eye roller. It's okay, whatever.
right.
But it has changed my life. And I would say more in the exhale than the inhale. And
Interesting.
when we breathe out, it sometimes causes us to look up, maybe whether it's the stars or a campfire or a leaf, or
Mhm.
or massive mountains or taking a walk in the green belt of your home, around the suburbs.
Yeah.
We start to have an encounter with things that are larger than ourselves. And what that does is it gives us perspective.
Yes.
Because when we're in it and we have our blinders on and we're focused on, and the deadline's tomorrow. And, I think there's a saying that says, you know, take a walk in nature a half an hour a day. And if you're really stressed, make it an hour.
Yes.
Heard this?
Yeah.
So when we're
And you
in
think,
this,
how in the world do I do that? How, like, how do I make that
yes,
happen? And that's the lack of curiosity, because we don't have the perspective. It's
that's
almost
right.
like we have to choose, "Oh, okay, I'm going to do this."
That's
And
it.
it feels
So,
brave.
and that's where observing comes in. All these work together. That if I'm in a project and I said to myself on my to-do list, I'm going to come up with the first scene today, or I'm in it, or now I'm interviewing wonderfully people, seniors, is I'm editing, I'm in a zone, and it's heavy. It starts to feel heavy,
Oh, that's a good word.
and in that moment of starting to feel heavy, breathe out. That's it. All you have to breathe out, put your pen down. And if that's all you do, that could be an encounter with sublime enough just to lean back, breathe out, put your pen down,
Mm.
look around, come back to it. It's you've come back with literally a fresh new breath.
I love that so much. And it actually, so in all transparency, Krista and I were having a phone conversation about how did we want this conversation to go yesterday. And my husband does this. And so I have modeled this off of him. When he is on a phone call, he goes for a walk. And the man walks literally almost a half marathon every day. It's insane. I am not that intent about it, but I did walk for our quick phone call. And while we were talking about this idea, I mean, and I love to walk outside, but I don't always pay attention in the same way. And you were saying these words, like we were talking about this idea of the
Right,
sublime.
right,
And I was
right.
noticing that this one pear tree that my neighbors had put in, I hadn't noticed they'd put in two. And it's the first time I had noticed there were two pear trees there. And the pears were big and heavy and they were on the ground, and like, oh my gosh, these pear trees are going to be amazing as they continue to grow because they're fairly new. And I just was like, oh, what a cool thing of life that we have fruit that is ripe actually when it's fallen on the ground. There's not a lot of point to like that particular thing that there's pears on the ground.
Right.
But as I started to think about it later, like a whole story came up for me, like a creative piece as I'm thinking
Yes.
about organizing some ways to demonstrate what it feels like in breakthrough. It's not fully formed yet. I don't have it all, but like I would not have had that moment had you not talked about paying attention to
Interesting.
sublime in that.
Interesting. Yeah.
And research, I don't know if you know this, but like research shows us that we stop breathing when we like check our email. Like we literally stop breathing. And so no wonder that we lose perspective
That's right.
because we're so intent on that.
Yeah.
So
We're literally holding our breath.
literally holding
Yeah.
our breath.
I remember it's so interesting what you say about the pear trees. When I was in Italy, asked to write and direct a show for World Expo with Cirque, and the theme of the expo was what was it? Food and energy for life. That's not the correct phrase, excuse me, but it was about food and sustainability of food. And so we were visiting all these farms. As a research trip. And so I needed to take a break, and so I lie down in the farmer's field, literally, and I'm lying down, and I didn't want to talk to anybody, and I'm lying down, and all of a sudden the bumblebees started, and at first I was kind of afraid, but then I was listening. It was like an orchestra of bees, and they were buzzing around, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Paid attention. What definitely was not thinking, oh, that's the missing piece of a show, but it was just really interesting. Well, fast forward a few months later, and I was in a library, literally creating this concept, and I thought of bumblebees, and that bumblebees they're a rare, they're a threatened species, and so I thought, and they produce honey, and they pollinate so much of the food we need to eat and vegetables. So I thought, we're going to, and so we had four bumblebees on 6 meter poles it's called a sway pole apparatus. And it was we recreated it. We made it more abstract, and that was probably one of the acts that received the most attention, and so meaning that it doesn't sound like it's a quantity of measurable gain when we're looking at the pear trees or when we're listening to these bees, when I was listening to the bees, but it actually made good business, it turned into a business decision.
Absolutely.
So
we don't want to use the word just.
yeah,
When we're curious, we want to have an interaction with the sublime.
The fourth, I'll be, run through these a little quicker, but the fourth I feel is really essential, is have a high regard for people.
Yeah.
No matter what we do, even as solopreneurs, we cannot do it alone. So that respect for collective expertise, and again, that requires a sublime, listening to other people's opinions and things like that. The fifth is listen. I cannot stress it enough. We've been talking about it, is listen to others, listen to the birds, and listen to ourselves when we get that feeling of maybe, and trust our intuition. So that takes deep, deep listening.
Yeah.
The sixth is, sorry, Jen.
I was just going to say, I think that one is really challenging, at listening to your own intuition. And it is a practice. And I never want people to feel, I can't tell people how to feel, but I don't want to feel like you should feel shameful if you don't know how to listen to your intuition. I think it's a practice over time. And you develop that, but it is such an important
100%.
thing to cultivate, like to pay attention. Again, back to that idea, paying attention of what do I actually want? Because it's really hard to make any steps into clarity if I don't know what I want. And sometimes I have to try it. That's where the curiosity comes in. Like you said, these all interweave. But I think just the permission that it's okay to trust your intuition, that it has something to say, is really important.
Exactly. Just lean in, literally feel yourself leaning in. Like our bodies have all the answers, I'm convinced. The sixth one relates to what you were just saying, Jen, and that is courage.
Yeah.
It takes an immense, in the creative field, it takes an immense amount of courage to work for no money for 10 years and then, chip away at your career. It takes a lot of courage. But I would say we and you, everyone listening, whatever you're doing for a living, you can think creatively. And that creative courage is so linked with that creative thinking. And that's when it's the courage to disrupt what you're doing, to disrupt a flow, to disrupt that you're coasting, and all of a sudden admit to yourself a very scary proposition, which is, I don't feel in alignment right now. And to listen, then to observe, then to pay attention, then to listen further. It takes incredible courage. It takes courage not to know. I know that I'm not fully in alignment here, but I have no idea what is next. And so that not knowing takes incredible courage, and to stick with that and trust that the four rooms of change, Janssen's four rooms of change, it goes from contentment, which is when we're coasting, to denial. Something isn't quite right, but I better keep doing what I'm doing because my kids need food and I can't afford to even play with this idea. But when we do play with this idea, it lands us in the room of confusion, which sometimes can feel even more awkward. But every single breakthrough idea, studies have shown, are preceded by frustration and confusion and bafflement. So this takes an amazing amount of courage. And then that breakthrough leads us to feel content.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a wonderful cycle. But
it is, but the courage is so important, because we are often, like, this story comes that you have to know as a leader, you have to be certain that the only way you're going to move forward is if you move forward confidently and certainty. And I think that the confidence is a skill that we practice, but I often call it valor, which is this idea of spirit that moves us to action in the face of uncertainty.
Wow.
Like, it's okay that that's uncertain. And I am working with people right now. I've got some clients who their workload is so great that it's damaging the work in some ways. And the courage to go and say, we might need to turn away business, or we might need to like the courage to go to a leader to say that is so powerful. But as they are working through it, it's changing.
That's
You
right.
know, but whoo, that state of confusion of I don't actually know the answer, but I know that I can't keep doing this
Yeah.
is
Who
really
would want
hard.
who would want to stay in that room for a long time? I mean,
Right,
it sounds
right.
it's
Get me out of that room. I say
ironically, it's
that.
counterintuitive to be in that room, but
Yes,
that's where, yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
yes.
The final two, or the last two, is the seventh is care,
Mm,
and that kind of goes with that listening is what what do you care about urgently?
mm,
In theater, we would say often say raise the stakes. So
mm,
in a scene, if it's two people talking in a cafeteria, it's not superhero. It's two people talking in a cafeteria. But then we'd say, even if they're talking about bagels, we would often say, this raise the stakes of the scene. What does that, what does each actor want out
mm,
of that? It might be, something personal for that character. So we would always say, raise the stakes. So it's something urgently is asking you to have this bagel with this person. So, and I would say that with care too. What do we all, each of us, care about, and align with that?
urgently is so important though, because
Feel that.
I absolutely care about hungry people. You know, like that is something that I don't not care. I have compassion, but for me in my life where I'm called to work, that's not the urgent
Right.
thing. And so I think that urgent word is such a valuable qualifier that helps us bring that clarity. Like the Plunko board. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's
That's
what.
right. And that's a great analogy. That's again with listening, with not saying the word just, with having courage, with the encounter with sublime. We will probably discover, as you said, we'll care about this one day and this, but something keeps resurfacing.
Mm,
And we can listen to that and
mm,
lean into that, and that's simple. It's wonder. It's We
mhm.
don't have to quit our jobs tomorrow when we have that. Well, we can play with that idea.
Yeah.
Play,
Mm,
seriously play, and not be threatened by it. It's not a bear in the woods. It's not a snake in the woods.
yeah.
It's a friend. It's a
Absolutely.
friend.
Play. I mean, I have a whole part of the Joyosity model that's on play. And I was recognizing for myself recently that I wasn't playing as much. I hadn't created space for wonder. I mean, launching a new brand, changing the way our team was working, launching a kiddo to college. My husband had changed jobs. Like everything was, and I wasn't playing. I naturally will play, but I wasn't creating space for that. And so you're
Right.
going to laugh,
Exactly.
but this is Figaro and our plant back here. And I have plants I've got Headington and Patina that you can't see right now, but that became a place of play for me. Like, can I experience a plant and can I keep this plant alive? Because I'm historically not great at that, but it created space for me to play with something
I,
that it wasn't anywhere in the realm of things that I do. And it was a new space of fun. Can I keep them alive? So, which is why they have names and they have
yeah.
places. And
But what a great example. And it's funny. I have to align with that too, because I just think what you said is really key there. Uh, I started growing basil and mint,
oh,
and they're outside in my, in our garden.
Bernard is my basil plant downstairs in the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to create a basil plant. I
It's
realized, so I
hard.
would
Way harder
spend.
than it should be.
But it's so rewarding to go out every morning and see how, I call them Betty and Veronica, how
Yes.
Betty and Veronica are doing. And you're right. It doesn't have to be playing in our own field, or how can I disrupt this massive, Q4 meeting, and break it up. But it does. It starts with the little things in our lives that bring that to us. And that, I guess, that kind of leads to the last one, which I find is important and kind of scary, which is be comfortable in that dance with chaos.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Chaos has a negative connotation, and I get it. It
Mhm,
of course it can. We're blessed in the English language that many words mean different things to different people. But the
mhm,
way I interpret it, and the way I was trained, for frankly, when I was in the creative field building shows, is right as soon as we'd have a plan,
Mm-hmm.
it would there was a belief that as soon as there's a perfect plan, that means that a little bit of a belief it's probably not going to be a great show, if you can believe it. We had to keep destroying like literally set the table, put the fork here, and then we throw it away. And we and then the rehearsal would be the next day. And so you'd feel kind of chaotic. And but again, often with good preparation, there is a deep plan in there, but it
Mm-hmm.
still allows you to to create, to
Yeah.
ideate, to engage
Mm-hmm.
without. I'm dating myself here without reading reading it without your eyes in a binder.
Yeah.
Looking at the plan, they're up, and
Uh-huh.
we can keep trusting that we'll know that things will go wrong.
Yeah.
Not if, it's when,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to make us. It's a dance. It's a
It is
fun
a
dance.
dance. I love the idea of a dance with chaos. I call it, I often call it the cha-cha with failure. Because it's a similar, like, I have to be able to experience failure as part of the process.
Yeah,
I find that most people uh, are afraid of failure because someone tells them something bad is going to happen, rather than failure is a part of the growing process. We have to figure out if it doesn't work or not. That's actually part of success.
so
And
true.
I think that in and of itself takes so much courage, because we live in a world that's like, it has to be 100% perfect, when really every bit of research shows us that 80% is actually what we need. We need 80%. And at 80%, there's that 20% that we can play with. We create the 20, we plan for this great surprises and rough surprises that will happen in life, whether that is at work, when, the client that you thought was solid, you know what, they lost part of their budget, and so that now you don't have that client, but then something else comes along. And
That's right.
how do you manage that? Like, the 80% is actually where it's at. And I love the idea of the dance with chaos, because it's going to happen, and we don't know if that is a heart condition that suddenly comes your way. We
Mhm.
don't know that it is, oh my gosh, this person who actually lost a job is the perfect person to add to my team.
That's right.
But if we make room for that, 100% locks us in a way that is going to eventually diminish the return, rather than the cha-cha with failure, the embrace the dance with chaos.
Right.
That's
And
so
it
powerful.
probably I've lived on the other side too, where as soon as something went wrong, it my body perceived it as a threat.
Oh
And then
yeah.
your adrenaline's being released, and then and then they say when emotion's high, intelligence is low. So when intelligence is high, I mean, I'm in the business of emotion, to be
Mhm.
honest. I don't, it's not food or water or medical care. It's
Mhm.
taking people on a journey. But we can, if we accept chaos as a dance, as
Mhm.
fun, dare I say,
Mhm.
then when that happens, something goes awry. We have to train ourselves that, oh, interesting, like just even that word, this is interesting, as opposed to holy, man, I'm a mess now, and then your adrenaline's then
Yeah.
then everything about your whole body is treating it as that problem, as a threat, and that wastes time.
Yes.
It wastes the time to get to the other side, where you're going, okay, again, breathe out. All right, this happened. What's the solution? And now we can be more solution minded.
Mhm.
So why go through? Why not skip that step and look at chaos as a dance,
Mhm.
and it tends to lend itself to that idea that when things happen, okay, change the
Mhm.
dance partner. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm still at the dance.
Mhm.
It's not a threat, and then
Yeah.
we're better positioned to think about solutions
Mhm.
more effectively.
Yeah, and again, it's about practice.
Yeah.
I was had an interesting experience a couple months ago, and where a speaker, I was not the speaker, I was in the audience, and the speaker had asked for volunteers, and my hand had kind of shot up. I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. I did not know that I would end up on the stage of Lincoln Center. That was not what I
I saw the
anticipated.
photo. Yes.
And however, as I reflected on that, it was because I had said tiny things along the way. over, like you said, it doesn't have to be big. I'm going to put my pen down, or I'm going to put my hands away from the keyboard and breathe out, and create a little bit of space. I'm going to ask courageously for this small project change that then allows you to start to disrupt. All of what I remember you saying in the previous episode was all of the big moves that you made were because you went forward to disrupt something.
Mm-hmm.
Disrupting and moving up the ladder doesn't happen without the practice before of the little steps. And so this is such a powerful toolkit, survival kit, even when we feel on the edge of making this practice. And I always talk about practice because it's never going to be 100%.
No.
And we have to build up to that.
It has to become a habit. When we're worried and when we are invested in and we're in it down a rabbit hole and we're feeling an obstacle or a certain heaviness, it is counterintuitive to put our pen down and breathe out. It was for me. It was, the great people, they never stop. You skip lunch and you do this, or you have your lunch at your desk. And I had drank that Kool-Aid for years, and then until it didn't work.
Right. Yeah. And it eventually doesn't work. And it does lead us to apathy and burnout and not great productive work. And when we force that on, even when we force that on ourselves or we force that on our team, we're actually diminishing the quality of what the work is that we can do for our business. Not just if you're in a creative industry, if you're an innovative industry, if you are serving clients in customers, any way, shape, or form, you will eventually not be able to match the pace of change because you have sucked so hard into this. Not making any space.
Yeah. And when you were describing that.
Yeah, my hands are gripping. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm making fists.
But it's rigidity.
Yes.
And it symbolizes that. And I was I had an idea, it was approved. So that's the idea. It's not going to move. So it became rigid. And so that's why I learned from the greats in my field, as soon as you have a good plan, you have to be courageous enough to kind of mess it up, because then we're not, the entire team of 500 people, whoever, are not approaching that with rigidity.
Yeah.
And then they can breathe and they can discover, their eyes are up, and play and create solutions. And there is a plan. There is a plan. And it's important to have. I understand it's important, but not to be so rigid that we lose that flexibility and that permission to be curious about, okay, it's going to be good. What about great? Or what if we make this mind-blowing? In efforts too, not every single one, would be described like that, but allow ourselves, accept.
One of my favorite people that I have ever worked with in my entire life. When I was an assistant head of school, she was the other, basically, assistant head of school. We were two directors, and we were very different people, like opposite personalities on every assessment you could ever take. And we loved working together. And where I would have described this idea of lack of rigidity as playing jazz, because there's a plan and like that.
Exactly.
Not people who aren't musicians don't always identify with that, but Dana always talked about writing things in pencil. And she, as she would identify herself as a recovering perfectionist, that there was so much more available when we wrote it in pencil. And I think that is such an interesting picture of lack of rigidity, of it's not that it's not there, but it doesn't have to stay that way.
Exactly. And we don't have to feel like we're going to get our hero cookie, that our first proposal out of the gate is brilliant and therefore check off the list. And that was the hardest for me too, is that I love lists. I have my checklist. And I remember working again in my field I was a choreographer at the time. And I remember going up to the director and saying, well, let's finish this piece. Let's work on this. And he said, no, not yet. And I said, why? He said, I don't know how it'll end yet. And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, we're going to work on scene, 7 before we work on scene 2. And I like to approach things in a linear way. But what he taught me was, if I don't feel, this isn't ready to be finished yet.
Mm.
If we were going to win the war and lose the battle by doing everything in a linear way, feeling good when you go home. We did scenes
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And then tomorrow is 5, 6, 7, 8. And but things were left unfinished. And
Mhm.
then we come back to it. And it was very kind of somewhat chaotic for me, but gosh, it taught it. I learned so much from him that when as a leader, for me to say I remember respecting him when he
Mhm.
said, "I'm not sure."
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking, you don't know what you're talking, you don't know, And so now when I'm working, or for the last, 20 years since then, if an employee or someone I'm working with or a fellow designer says, "Oh, so tell me what this is going to be," or
Mhm.
something, and I'll say something like this, loose language,
Yeah.
loose language,
Mm.
something like this, or this is a for sure, this is a must have, this is a nice to have. We're not sure about this, blah 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 blah. Often it leaves room for their ideas,
Mhm.
but often that meeting would leave with, "So I'm not sure yet." And I learned from my feeling towards this other director that, you know, my definition of leadership is, or there's so many definitions, is quality of decision making.
Mm.
And so that was interesting. His decision when I asked him was, "I'm not sure,"
Mhm.
and how there's value in that.
Mm.
And yeah,
It
and,
makes it
and at the same, like,
uncomfortable,
yeah,
but that's where the courage comes back in. I
the
think that's
courage
powerful.
and what you were saying, communicate, or excuse me, connection.
Yeah.
Because in a way, there's some vulnerability in that answer.
Oh, there's a
Not
huge
sure.
amount of
Right.
vulnerability.
So
Yeah.
vulnerability meets vulnerability. And now the team, they're excited to propose. They're not executing and that's what I would always say to my teams. I, we're not around this table to execute my vision. We're
Mhm.
here to listen to my vision. And then the vision isn't sitting here. It's
Mhm.
it's in the middle of the table. I
Yeah.
was hired to nourish it, to think of the right, to conceive the idea, to conceive a through line, to conceive. I had pretty good ideas of how maybe it would even unfold, but the brainstorms, the round tables, I would say, you're not. It's because everyone wants to be liked by the leader, and
Yeah.
liked. And I said, actually, don't worry about me liking you. Worry about the vision liking you.
Yeah.
Let's add to this. It's like putty,
Mm.
a big ball of
And
putty.
that's why we hire good people who are experts or have different perspectives than we do, because
Yeah,
we
exactly.
we need them. Like, that's why you hired them. And otherwise, that's what a robot does. Like, we need the people and their perspective and ideas, and it's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could talk forever with you. Can you run through one more time quickly just these not just. Would you please run through these powerful 8 ideas that we've talked about? They're big ideas and we've broken down food, but give us the bullets again.
Okay.
Mhm.
Pay attention to when we use the word just.
Mhm.
Sorry, Jen, I know you don't want caveats here, but as we just mentioned, it can serve us well. If you
Ah,
have a momentous, ginormous project, and we're looking at the Mount Everest of the pinnacle of that project, we do sometimes need to just take small steps to get there.
simply. How
So it can serve us. It's just
Yes.
pay attention to the word just.
Okay.
To be curious,
Mhm.
and be curious, be an observer of life. The third one is have develop an encounter with the sublime,
Mm.
whatever that may be. Could be an exhale and our pen down. 4, have a high regard for people and that idea of collective expertise. The 5th is listen deeply to ourselves and others. The 6th is courage, courage to disrupt the flow, courage to take a step back, and that taking a step back actually means more
Mhm.
for many of us. The 7th is care. Ask yourselves, what do I care deeply about and urgently about that I want to express it or align it with what I'm doing in some way in my life? And the last one is take care and comfort in that dance with chaos and
Mm.
trust that it will lead you to clarity.
It's such a powerful survival kit and really practical to everyone in this space. Even if you are not necessarily in a quote unquote creative field, but we all live a creative life. Because let me tell you, the people who organize spreadsheets sometimes, I'm like, I would have never come, like, that's insane. I don't even know how to do that. And thank you for it. And it's this creative life that we live that will bring us joy when we're doing these things, and that joy at work comes from these connections to who we are as people and to who others are. And just, oh, so many amazing things. I'm so grateful for your wisdom, for your expertise, for
Oh,
your time. I love, what you're doing now. If you want to connect with Krista around Sincerely Yours memoirs and being able to preserve some of those great stories for people. She's a wonderful storyteller and documentarian and beautiful listener in that way. I highly recommend that you connect with Krista in that way. And we will be back next week with our In Case You Missed It episode with me and Shelby. So we're so grateful that you are joining us. And I hope that you go out and make work a joy today with your survival kit. Thanks for joining us, Krista.
thank you, Jen. It's amazing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. So let me put my coach hat on for just a moment. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them what you're going to do. Check the show notes for all the links and connect with us on LinkedIn and all the other socials, or just, drop me an email at Jen with 2 N's at jenwhitmer.com. We want to keep this conversation going with you. I know your earballs have a lot coming at them, so thank you for listening to the Joyosity podcast and being a part of our community. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people join us in the movement to create positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.